everybody, and welcome to this month's video. For anyone new here, I'm Gigi, and I'm a full-time animator and artist. I recently upgraded my iPad and have been using this new one for about a month. For anyone curious about the specs, it's a iPad Pro 13-inch M5. It has 512 gigabytes of storage and standard glass. I also added on an Apple Pencil, obviously. And since I've been using it, I've been getting a lot of questions about how I use my iPad as an artist and animator, and how it compares to traditional drawing tablet setup, and if I think it's worth it. So I wanted to do a more detailed breakdown of where I personally think the iPad fits into a creative workflow, but these are just my thoughts. Do what works best for your budget and your creative workflow. These are just my thoughts in case you're considering getting one, so hopefully this will help you. And in this video, I'm just going to be coloring in a phone background that will be up on Patreon. If you're interested, you can head over there. There's tons of great content on there already, so if you're interested, we'd love to have you. No pressure, but I just want to let you know it's there if you want it. And of course, thank you to my patrons. You make all of this possible, so thank you. And without further ado, let's dive in. Also, just before we begin, I'm not going to do any overlays on this video. I'm just going to be chatting, so feel free to put me on in the background if you want, do some creative work if you'd like, and just listen to me ramble. So I hope you enjoy. So one of the ways I commonly see iPads versus drawing tablets framed online with this debate is usually it's going to be, should I get an iPad or a drawing tablet? But for me, and I think a lot of artists and animators, they serve completely different purposes. Not for everyone, of course, but that's just how I usually see them. My iPad, for me, is not a replacement for my desktop setup. I still use my computer for much heavier production work, larger animation projects, editing, file management, rendering, multitasking, and software that just works better on a desktop rather than an iPad. But my iPad has become one of the most consistently useful creative tools I own because it fits seamlessly into every part of the process surrounding the actual production work. I'm using it constantly throughout the day. One of the things I first do when I wake up is I open Notion and I use it for planning projects, organizing my content ideas, tracking deadlines, writing notes, and just keeping my creative research all in one place. I personally love Notion. None of this is sponsored, by the way. No one sent me anything. I would love to be sponsored by Notion. I love you, Notion, so much. In case Notion is out there, please like me. But anyway, I also use Pinterest on my iPad. I think the iPad app is superior to it on the desktop or the phone. It's a whole vibe. It's great for collecting references and inspiration, but on the iPad, it's just a whole different experience. And I really recommend, if you have an iPad already, to use Pinterest there. And of course, I also sketch on Procreate almost daily. I use Procreate not as professionally as some artists do. I usually save my more professional work for Photoshop or another drawing tool that I have on my desktop just because my computer is more powerful. But I use Procreate especially for thumbnails, rough concepts, visual brainstorming, or studies. And that's not to say that Procreate cannot be used for professional work. Lots of artists use it for full comics and, animations and all this beautiful work. And I'm not saying that it can't handle that. It's just, for me, it's a little easier on my desktop. And if I have the desktop available, I'm probably going to use that. That's just me personally. And same with Procreate Dreams. I use it for smaller animation ideas, timing tests, rough animatics, or experimenting with motion in kind of a lower pressure setting. But if I'm doing big, work in Premiere or After Effects, I'm gonna use the desktop just because I find the keyboard shortcuts easier. It's just easier for me. I'm personally gonna do whatever's easiest for my workflow because life is hard enough as it is. So the way I use my iPad the most actually is not for, workflow or planning at all. It's using it as a second monitor. And I think you can do this with any MacBook or Apple desktop computer. If you have something called Sidecar, I think it's called Sidecar with Apple, but you can just open up your settings and use your iPad as a second monitor, which is amazing. And, having a second monitor is crucial for an animator or artist. I'll have, references open while I'm animating on my computer. I'll use it for scripts or feedback or storyboards or client notes, whatever I need to also see while I'm working. It's just much easier than constantly switching between windows on my main display. I also use it a lot, I use my iPad like a lot of people use their computer, and I use it for educational purposes and also just watching videos. I watch a lot of tutorials while I'm following along making animations. I take classes at Stanford right now, so I take So usually I'm using it to take notes during courses, I'm reading PDFs, I'm studying animations frame by frame. I just like that it's a very flexible workspace that I can use on the go, well, either for learning or creating. And to me, the biggest strength of the iPad is not necessarily the power of it, but the accessibility. Not in terms of the price, because iPads are definitely not cheap, but in terms of accessibility to creative process itself, if that makes sense. The iPad removes a lot of friction between having an idea and then also acting on it. Personally, the hardest thing for me to do when I'm starting a project is literally just sit down and start. Like, that is very stressful for me. I don't know if anyone else out there can relate, but trying to just, get the power to sit down and start once you have an idea is so hard. But the iPad, I have an idea, and then the iPad I open and just click one button and Procreate is right there. Whereas my desktop, I might have to open a couple apps, everything takes forever to load, and I have a powerful computer, it's an M5 Pro chip or whatever, and everything it takes a few more steps, and those couple steps can stop me from starting a new project. But the iPad just feels so much more integrated into everyday life. I can sketch on my couch, I can storyboard in my bed, I can, have thumbnails on a train ride, whatever I'm doing. While I'm traveling or on the go or just, wherever this idea hits me, I can have my iPad right there, and it's right. I can open it up and there's no friction. I don't have to run my computer, I don't have to try and open it up, try to get the idea down. It's just right there. And I think that's what makes it really great for students and freelancers, illustrators, storyboard artists, content creators, I have a whole list here, writers, visual development artists, and just people who really enjoy exploratory or idea-driven creative work. I especially think it's great for artists and creatives who want an all-in-one portable system, because it's not just a drawing device. You can use it for planning, sketching, an inspiration library, media device, digital journal, reference board, a portable animation studio, and sometimes even just a travel office. When I travel, I usually don't take my laptop because it's so heavy. I take my iPad. And it's a really great combination of things that I think a lot of people will find useful, whether they're, a beginner artist or professional. At the same time, though, I do think there are situations where a traditional drawing tablet is going to be objectively a better tool. And again, this is all my opinion. You're welcome to have a different one. I know opinions on the internet are not great, but I'm going to share mine anyway. So personally, I think if you work in a very heavily production-focused, pipeline-focused, or technically demanding area, desktop setups are going to have some major advantages. Programs like After Effects, Toon Boom, Blender, Maya, Cinema 4D, Photoshop Premiere, and the other industry standard software simply are going to have more depth and flexibility in a desktop environment. You tend to get better multitasking, file management. File management is a big one. Processing power, plugin support, storage options, export control, and just generally better ergonomics for long work sessions. And this is going to be especially important for people like animators, editors, motion designers, VFX artists, and anyone working in larger collaborative pipelines, especially when you're working with giant file sizes. Like some of my files are terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of storage. And that is just not going to work on an iPad. And I don't think it has to. I think an iPad is not meant for that, and that's okay. That's what I have my desktop for. Because the iPad is not going to be a magical replacement for every professional workflow. For some people, it can definitely be a main device. But for a lot of working professional artists, it's better to understand it as an extension of their workflow rather than a replacement for it. And I hope that makes sense. For me, I really love the setup I have. I have a desktop setup for heavy production work, and then an iPad for almost everything else in my life. And, I know that's not going to be feasible for everyone. Sometimes people have to choose, or, and that's totally fine too. But this is just if you are thinking of getting an iPad as well, it may be something that you add on to your already amazing desktop workflow to add on to it rather than replace it, is what I'm trying to get at. For me, the desktop handles large animation files, editing, rendering, professional software, and multitasking, while my iPad is better for planning, brainstorming, storyboarding, portable sketching, some creative research, social media content, and quick revisions. My iPad is not going to ever replace my desktop setup, I don't think. But for me, I think that it creates a creative accessibility throughout the day that I value so much. And that's why I can't ever not have an iPad, personally. It's not going to replace my professional tools, but it supports the entire ecosystem around being a creative person. And I think that's probably where its biggest strength lies. But, again, that's just me. I would love to hear how you use your iPad or don't use an iPad, if you like to do traditional desktop setup with a traditional drawing tablet, or if you draw traditionally without any digital work at all. I would love to hear about that too. So please let me know what you use to create your work, what you think. If you agree, disagree, just, keep it nice in the comments. But I'd love to hear about it. Okay, hope you have a great creative day. See y'all.